She returned the engagement ring. I deserve a diamond. Not your grandmother's old stone. I didn't argue, I just kept it. Many years later, at an antique auction, she saw that very ring sold for $80,000, while she was wearing her cheap lab-grown diamond. Of all the ways I imagined my proposal night ending, this wasn't one of them. The old velvet box lay open on the coffee table. The ring, my grandmother's sapphire and diamond heirloom, rested cold in my hand, not on hers. Chloe handed it back with a look that stripped every trace of romance from the room. "I deserve a real diamond," she said flatly. "Not your grandmother's old stone." Her words killed the mood instantly. The candlelight that once felt warm now just made everything look colder. Even the scallops I'd cooked for her suddenly smelled wrong. I was 28, an architect who liked things that lasted, unlike us. I made good money, enough for a comfortable life, but I'd never been one for flashy displays. My car was reliable, my watch told the time, and my satisfaction came from seeing a client's face light up when they walked into a space I'd created for them. I found beauty in old things, the kind built to last. To me, value was measured in legacy and integrity, not price tags. Chloe at 26 was my polar opposite, a fact I'd once found exhilarating. A senior buyer for a high-end fashion boutique, she knew brands the way I knew blueprints. To her, image was everything. We met at work. She liked my calm. I liked her spark. It worked, until it didn't. But now, in the devastating silence of her impeccably decorated apartment, the chasm between us felt unbridgeable, and the ring was the physical embodiment of that chasm. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a piece of my family's soul. It was my grandmother's, an Art Deco piece with a sapphire at its heart. The ring symbolized everything between us, old versus new, meaning versus image. It was my grandmother's, an Art Deco piece with a sapphire at its heart. This ring was their history, a promise of permanence. It was the most valuable thing I could ever offer anyone. To Chloe, it was just an old stone. No brand, no story she cared to hear. A relic. Something without a brand name or a certificate from Tiffany, and therefore without worth. The box felt heavier than before. The silence was worse than yelling. I could hear the faint hiss of the candle wicks and the frantic beating of my own heart. Slowly, deliberately, I closed the velvet box. The soft final click echoed in the space between us like a door shutting forever. "I understand," I said, my voice dangerously calm. It was a tone I used with difficult clients, not the woman I'd wanted to marry. Chloe's expression, which had been set in defiant expectation, faltered. She'd prepared for a scene, for pleading, for negotiations, for promises to buy something better. My quiet acceptance was a script she hadn't rehearsed. "Alex, don't be like this. Be reasonable," she said, her tone shifting from disgust to impatience. "It's not personal." "But think logically. What will my friends say when they see this? This antique on my finger? My clients expect a certain image. They wear new pieces from Tiffany and Cartier every season. This," she gestured vaguely at the box in my hand, "it looks like a costume piece. It's embarrassing." I stood up, my movements feeling slow and deliberate. The ring box was a lead weight in my pocket. I looked at the woman I thought I'd build a life with, and saw a stranger preoccupied with the opinions of people she claimed not to care about. "You're right," I said, my voice flat. "It is an antique. It has history. It witnessed a love that lasted a lifetime. I thought that mattered. I thought that was the whole point." I walked out of her perfectly staged apartment, the door clicking shut behind me with a softer, yet more definitive sound than the ring box. I left behind the uneaten dinner, the flickering candles, and the future we'd planned. The scent of her expensive perfume mixed with the aroma of the meal I'd cooked would forever be linked in my mind with this particular, gut-wrenching flavor of heartbreak. The official unraveling was as swift and brutal as it was predictable. My phone buzzed incessantly for days. Her texts were a masterclass in deflection. "I can't believe you're being so emotionally manipulative," one read. Another said, "You don't understand the professional pressure I'm under. Image is everything in my world." The most cutting one arrived at 2 a.m. "If you really loved me, you'd want me to have what truly makes me happy, not what's convenient for you." I stopped replying. Arguing felt like trying to explain color to someone born blind. Our values weren't just different. They were speaking different languages. 2 weeks later, as I was numblessly scrolling through my phone, her Instagram feed delivered the final blow. There she was, beaming next to Mark, the venture capitalist she'd mentioned with increasing frequency over the past few months. On her finger was a gargantuan, perfectly clear, brilliantly cut lab-grown diamond. It was flawless, generic, and in my opinion, completely soulless. The caption was a triumphant, "When you finally get what you deserve, Chak real of Chak a real diamond, Chak upgraded." The speed of it was a nauseating confirmation of everything I now understood. I hadn't been offering a future. I'd been an obstacle to the lifestyle she felt entitled to. The initial raw anger eventually subsided, leaving behind a hollowed-out curiosity. What was the ring in the cold, hard language of the world Chloe valued so much? I needed to know. I brought the velvet box to Everhart & Sons, a prestigious auction house that smelled of lemon polish and old money. Mr. Sterling, the head appraiser, was a man in his 70s with hands that trembled slightly until they held a piece of jewelry, at which point they became as steady as stone. He took the ring, placed his loupe to his eye, and was silent for a long, long time. The only sound was the soft tick of a grandfather clock in the corner. "Remarkable," he finally breathed, looking up at me with something approaching reverence. "A true Art Deco masterpiece, circa 1925. The sapphire is an untreated Burmese stone. That cornflower blue is exceptionally rare today. The diamonds are old European cut, you see, full of fire and character, not like the sterile, brilliant cuts of today. The platinum filigree work. This level of craftsmanship doesn't exist anymore." He set it down on the black velvet pad with immense care. "It's a piece of history, son. And with the provenance of your grandparents' enduring love story." He named a figure that made my breath catch. Auction estimate. $40,000 to $80,000, perhaps more, to the right collector who understands what they're looking at. I left the auction house with the ring still in my pocket, but its weight had transformed. It was no longer just a symbol of rejection. It was a quiet, powerful vindication. I didn't sell it. Instead, I stored it in a safety deposit box. It became my secret, a tangible reminder that my understanding of value wasn't naive or cheap. It was simply deeper, rooted in something far more enduring than the seasonal whims of the luxury market. The ring had given me my first real lesson in the difference between price and worth. 3 years passed. The sharp edges of the heartbreak had smoothed into a dull, manageable ache, and then faded altogether. I poured all my energy into my work, and it paid off. My small architectural firm, Atelier Stone, began gaining recognition for our thoughtful, sustainable designs that blended modern aesthetics with timeless craftsmanship. We won awards, were featured in design blogs, and I found a deep, quiet satisfaction in building something that was truly mine. I'd started dating again, cautiously. Sarah was a historian I'd met at a gallery opening. She had a calm, observant presence, and eyes that seemed to see the story in everything. When I'd finally shared the story of Chloe and the ring with her one rainy afternoon, she hadn't focused on the money or the drama. She'd listened intently, then taken my hand and said, "What a beautiful, heartbreaking thing to be offered that kind of legacy and be completely blind to it." Her loss was profound. In that moment, another piece of the past finally settled into place. It was Sarah who, one evening as we cooked dinner in my apartment, gently suggested it was time. "That ring protected you," she said, chopping herbs with practiced ease. "It gave you the clarity to walk away and the confidence to build this life. But you don't need its protection anymore, Alex. It's a beautiful thing, and it deserves to be seen and appreciated. Let it go. Let it fund the next chapter of the life you built for yourself." Her words resonated. The ring had served its purpose. I contacted Mr. Sterling at Everhart & Sons. He was delighted and immediately slated it as a highlight for their upcoming Important Jewels autumn auction. The auction room smelled of money and old wood. The room was full of people who looked like they belonged there. Sarah sat beside me, her hand a comforting, steady presence on my arm. I was scanning the program when... Then I heard a laugh I hadn't forgotten. My eyes found its source a few rows ahead. Chloe. She was there, seated next to Mark. She looked older. Tired, maybe. Mark looked bored, already scrolling on his phone. And on her left hand I saw it, the same big lab-grown diamond shining hard under the lights. It glittered with a cheap, desperate insistence next to the understated elegance that filled the room. My stomach tightened, but it wasn't with anger or longing. It was a surreal sense of inevitability. Lot 1 to 19, the auctioneer's voice rang out, crisp and clear. An exceptional Art Deco sapphire and diamond ring, circa 1925, featuring a magnificent untreated Burmese sapphire and a halo of old European cut diamonds set in platinum. Accompanied by a beautiful provenance of a love story spanning 6 decades, I saw Chloe's spine go rigid. She leaned forward, her eyes wide and disbelieving, fixed on the high-resolution screen where the ring was displayed in all its glory. I watched the journey on her face in horrifying slow motion. Confusion, dawning recognition, and then a wave of pure, unadulterated shock as the bidding opened. 30,000, the auctioneer began. 35, 40, 45. The numbers climbed, a rhythmic chant that seemed to suck the air from the room. Chloe's head whipped around, her eyes frantically scanning the crowd until they landed directly on me. Her face said everything. 80,000, a voice called from the back. 80,000. Do I hear 80? A pause. The gavel fell with a sharp, definitive crack. Sold for $80,000 to the gentleman on the phone. A soft, respectful murmur rippled through the crowd. Chloe remained frozen for a second. Then she abruptly stood, mumbled something to a bewildered Mark, and stumbled into the aisle. Making a beeline for me, "Alex," she breathed, her voice trembling, her face pale. She wore the same perfume. That was your grandmother's ring?" "It was," I said, my voice even, my hand still in Sarah's. "Why didn't you tell me?" The question was a plea, desperate and pathetic. "I've never told me it was worth that much. I told you it meant everything to me. I told you it represented a love that lasted a lifetime. I offered you my history. You told me it was an old stone. You defined value by the brand on the box, not the story inside it." Tears welled in her eyes, but they sparked with a flash of her old defensiveness. "I was a fool, Alex. I was young and stupid and shallow. I see its beauty now, I really do." Her gaze flickered toward Sarah, then back to me, full of a newfound, calculating appreciation. I let my gaze drop pointedly to the giant, glittering diamond on her left hand. "Do you?" I asked quietly. "Or do you just see the price tag?" She recoiled as if I'd slapped her. The truth of the question hung in the air between us, undeniable and cruel. There was no answer she could give that wouldn't condemn her. With a choked sob, she turned and left. Mark followed. I watched them go, feeling the final, fragile thread to that part of my past snap and dissolve into nothing. Outside, I finally exhaled. Sarah squeezed my hand but said nothing, understanding that some silences needed to be respected. We went to our favorite little Italian place. Over pasta, Sarah finally broke the silence. "Are you okay?" I thought about it. Truly thought about the whirlwind of emotions from the evening. "Surprisingly, yes," I said. "It feels finished. Like I can finally stop replaying it." When the money came through, I used part of it to open a small studio. Work continued to flourish. The auction story, in a strange way, became part of my professional narrative. A client who'd been at the auction that night commissioned a dining table, saying he wanted something with that same kind of soul. My business grew steadily, built on referrals from people who valued craftsmanship over trends. About 6 months after the auction, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Chloe and Mark had split. I wasn't surprised. I felt a pang of sympathy for the Chloe I'd once loved, but it was distant, like hearing about a character in a novel. Meanwhile, my relationship with Sarah deepened. She was everything I hadn't known I needed. Steady, curious, and utterly unimpressed by superficial displays of wealth. For her birthday, I built her a simple bookshelf from reclaimed walnut. When she saw it, her eyes filled with tears. "You made this for me?" she'd whispered, running her fingers over the wood grain as if reading a story. She filled it with her beloved history books the same day, arranging and rearranging them with a care that spoke volumes. One evening, as we were cooking together in my apartment, my phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender name made me pause. Chloe Parker. "Alex," it began. "I know I have no right to write this, and I'll understand if you delete it immediately. I saw the feature on your studio in Design Weekly. It looks like you've built exactly the life you always wanted. I'm genuinely happy for you. I've been doing a lot of work on myself lately, therapy mostly, unpacking why I made the choices I did. What I said to you, what I did. It was the biggest mistake of my life. I confused price with value and status with substance. I didn't just lose a ring. I lost the man who offered me a real, meaningful life. I lost you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I am sorry, and that I finally understand what you were trying to give me. Chloe, I read it once, then closed my laptop. There was no anger, no satisfaction, just a quiet acknowledgement. Maybe she had grown. Maybe she hadn't. It no longer mattered to my life. Everything okay? Sarah asked, coming up behind me and wrapping her arms around my waist. I turned and kissed her forehead. Everything's perfect. The real value was never in the ring. It was in what it taught me, the difference between something that shines and something that lasts.